Good.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending the special meeting of the Dare County Board of Education. We're going to call the meeting to order. Today is Monday, January 30th. We're meeting at the Dare County School Administrative Offices in Nags Head, and the time is 3:01. Before we start, I'd like to do the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. As we begin, I'd like to request a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion we approve the agenda.
And we have a motion by Ms. Balance and a second by Ms. Bothwell. Any discussion? Hearing none, I call for a vote. All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. At this time, we're going to turn the meeting over to Ms. Rachel Hitch, Board Attorney for Dare County Schools.
Sure, I don't have a presentation or anything for you all. We are here, I think, to look at a second reading on the two policies that we brought before the board, when Brian was with you at the beginning of January. And the two policies are the 3105, which is a completely new policy that allows part-time admission of homeschool students, and the 3620, which is extracurricular activities and student organizations, and which we have amended to accommodate the inclusion of dually enrolled school students in high school athletics.
Mr. Bass-Knight, we're going to turn the meeting over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, board members, I've gone through both policies and thought it would be beneficial for all of us, as well as the parents and our current administration and staff, to understand what exactly is in the policy and the requirement to adhere to the policy. So we put together a presentation here. Aaron, if you go to the Okay. In my presentation today, I will cover 6 main points. The first one being first steps, where do you start, and then the initial admission of students into Dare County schools who are currently homeschooled, the requirements of those students after admission, items that need to take place throughout the sports season, significant dates for everyone to be aware of, and the Dare County Schools policies that govern both of these policies today. First of all, I wanted to make these points of emphasis. Everything that we talk about today, all the information that's being shared to you, is required of all Dare County Schools athletes, not just students who are being who wish to try out, who are currently homeschooled. This is pretty much the requirement for any athlete within Dare County Schools. Policy 3105, which would be a new policy that the board would have to approve today, and the revisions to policy 3620 do not require any additional information or actions by our current Dare County Schools student athletes. So this is not new requirements. This is nothing addition to what we're already doing. Okay? Our first steps. If this policy passes in this meeting today, a homeschool student must notify the principal in their assigned school, that would be the school in their attendance zone, in writing of that student's intent to try out for an athletic team at least 10 days prior to the first practice. So this is January 30th. Friday of this week is Friday the 3rd. That would be 10 days before the first official practice, which would be February 13th. I believe that's why the board wanted to have the special called meeting, so it would allow parents the time this week to get those official notifications to the principal before the Friday deadline. The 10 days is in the policy. That's not an arbitrary number that we're working with today.
Can I ask a question? On that 10 days, is that, what's the reasoning for the 10 days?
If you'll let me go through
Okay.
that. With what has to be done. Okay. So parents of homeschool students will need to provide, this is after notification, after you provide the notification in the 10 days, will need to provide academic records from the previous and current year, and that's from policy 3620. Those will include a transcript, attendance records, and records of immunization. You'll need to provide proof that the homeschool student has been enrolled in a registered North Carolina approved homeschool for the prior 365 days, again from policy 3620, and the results of an achievement test that's been taken within the last year that indicate that your student athlete is functioning on grade level. So the requirements for participation in high school athletics. The student will have to attend the high school in their attendance zone, reference policy 4120. They must be enrolled in 2 classes, that will be the new policy 3105. They have to take at least one of those classes on campus, again policy 3105. And they must pass all classes in which they are enrolled to maintain their eligibility. They will need to maintain continuous dual enrollment, or they will be ineligible to participate in athletics for a 365-day period. So you just can't come in for one season and then go away at the end of that season, or you will not be allowed to participate in athletics for the next 365 days. Agree to participate in all required district, state, and federal testing, as well as agree to adhere to the Dare County Schools Student Code of Conduct. Your participation will be determined by the rules and regulations of the North Carolina High School Athletic Association and all other defining parties. Those parties include local Dare County schools, as well as Department of Public Instruction and the North Carolina Board of Education. The parent or guardian will assume responsibility of transportation to and from practices. Obviously, a student athlete who makes the team will travel on the athletic bus with the team, but we can't provide bus transportation unless there's a bus already going there. And most of the time, at the end of practice, that wouldn't be the case. And the student must also maintain attendance in an active registered homeschool. They can't just take the 2 classes with Dare County Schools. It will be the responsibility of the parent and student to provide the sports season coach with regular updates. And those would be determined by you and by the parent and the coach on student attendance, as well as successful academic progress in the homeschool courses. Here are the significant dates that we're dealing with. Spring semester in Dare County High Schools will begin tomorrow, January 31st. You will need to provide written notification to the principals of your intent of your student athlete to try out by this Friday, February 3rd. And the first official day of spring sports season tryouts will be on Monday, February 13th. And we're going to post this so it's available. Don't wear your hands on the phone, write it all down. This will be up for you to pull down. The policies that are covered under the revision, as well as the new policy and our current policies that apply, will be the immunization and health requirements. That's policy 4110. Domicile and resident requirements, policy 4120. School assignment, policy 4150. The revised, if approved, extracurricular activities and student organization, and that's policy 3620. And then the new policy, if approved, which is part-time admission of homeschool students, policy 3105. So today, the board will be reviewing and voting on a new policy, 3105. And this new policy is to allow homeschool students in Dare County to enroll and try out for high school athletics, compatible with the North Carolina High School Athletic Association rules and regulations. And revising the policy 3620 on extracurricular activities and student organizations so that that policy is compatible with dual enrollment and the new 3105. I think that's it. So let me say one more thing, Mr. Chairman, before I turn it over. None of the requirements of the new policy or the revision of our current policy is additional requirements on anyone. Those are requirements that are applied to every student athlete in Dare County schools. The difference would be that we currently have all that information on hand and on file in Dare County schools. And we would need to obtain that information for homeschool student athletes to be eligible to participate. We are closely tied to the North Carolina High School Athletic Association rules and regulations, which govern eligibility. And that's why we're trying to follow their rules, because essentially the same rules that apply to our current student athletes will apply to any homeschool student athletes that try out. I know it sounds like a lot, but when we've already got it on file, we would need that information from our homeschool parents in order to meet those regulations. Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Superintendent Bassett. Do we go to a motion now, or do we have questions first from our board members?
I got a question.
You can motion in second and then have discussion.
Okay, right. And the revision needs to come first for 3620, before 31.
Well, you need to vote on the new policy, because if the new policy doesn't pass, then you wouldn't have revisions.
Gotcha, okay. So do I hear a motion to approve our new policy 3105 for part-time admission of homeschool students as presented? Do I hear a
Motion to approve policy 3105.
Have a motion by Ms. Balance, second by Ms. Bockwell. Any discussion?
I got questions. There's been comments about the definition of homeschool.
Yes, sir.
Do we need to define what a homeschool is in this policy?
Rachel?
We could, if you wanted to, you can still adopt it today, but we could say a homeschool that's registered with the Department of Non-Public Education. The thing about homeschool in North Carolina is that they just have to register with the Department of Non-Public Education. There's not really an approval process. They just, as long as they meet the criteria, then they register with that agency. But we can say a registered homeschool if you're more comfortable saying that.
And a registered homeschool will
Yeah.
receive a number from the state.
Yeah, I would support that to that. The other question that I have is on line 4, it says enrollment of a high school homeschool student. What about middle school students?
So what we have drafted so far applies just at the high school level because of your dual enrollment practices in general. In your county so far, it's only high schoolers that have been dually enrolled.
Just for clarity, we don't have students that are taking classes in college in middle school or coming and going in the middle of the day. A lot of that has to do with the schedule. If a student comes in the middle of the day, it depends on which class and which grade level is being offered
Yeah.
during that time.
But that requirement is from the North Carolina Athletic Association, right?
The North Carolina High School Athletic Association governs high school athletics. Middle schools follow the High School Athletic Association recommendations.
But right now, we're not planning any middle school homeschoolers to participate in middle school sports.
No, sir. These policies only are
To high
specific to
school.
high school. And
And
it
is that
says it,
because we only offer dual enrollment at the high school level? We don't offer dual enrollment in middle school?
yes, ma'am.
But we wouldn't have to have that requirement in middle school, would we?
But the policy requires to be duly enrolled.
Okay.
It requires you to be in high school.
So the High School Athletic Association policy requires that for a homeschool student to participate in public school athletics, they must be dually enrolled according to the district's dual enrollment policies. Your dual enrollment policy allows dual enrollment at the high school level. So you could, but if you open that up, you're considering, if you open up dual enrollment to the middle school level, that's a bigger policy decision for the board than just homeschool athletic decision. So it's not that you can't decide it, I'm just advising you that that would include dual enrollment for, what if they wanted to take college courses, what if they wanted to, whatever it may be.
Okay. So is there any thought of, we have after-school activities like maybe a strings group that meets together after school in an elementary school, having somebody that's not enrolled participate in that?
This policy is specific
This is
to
just for
athletics.
us. But I mean, just as general, do we see any feedback on that? No plans?
All I can comment on is what the board brought to me and this policy was specifically written for athletics under the guise of the North Carolina High School Athletic Association, so that wouldn't apply to any of the discussion.
And Mr. Woody, your question is well taken. I think what the board could decide, what we started with the discussion is pretty narrow. High school and athletics. Let's get it going there. If the board decides that they want to broaden that availability at some point in the future, then that would certainly be up to the board.
Personally, in my opinion, I think the more we can have these children socializing with other children would be better. Right now, we're going to focus on this high school.
That's what the policy entails.
Okay.
I have a question about, so everybody that knows, my kid knows that he's a handful. He had an IEP. If you have a child that is homeschooled, that would traditionally, how would that work if they had an IEP or needed an IEP?
Sure. So the way it works is once a kid gets enrolled with the school system, we have to offer services to a student who needs them. So we would offer those services for the courses in which the student was enrolled at their assigned school in the district. But a parent always has the right to consent or not consent to special education services for a student. So if the student enrolled was partially enrolled, was dual enrolled with us, and the parent wanted the EC services that we thought the child needed for the courses they were taking with us, then they could take them. If they didn't want them, they could also reject them. They could also reject them and not consent for us to serve them, in which case that child would not receive EC services. So that just like our regularly enrolled students, to receive or not receive EC services would be up to the parent.
Okay. And for, as far as the classes are concerned, they wouldn't have to necessarily take a math or a calculus or science. It could be anything that school offers.
Right. Go
Go ahead,
ahead.
Rachel, and then I'll comment.
Was that for me?
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. So we just laid out that they have to take 2 courses to be enrolled. One of them has to be in person. We didn't really get into what those courses had to be. So it's half the school day. At least one course has to be on campus.
Right, but in the policy, it specifically states as available.
Right.
So
Right.
that somebody can't come in and say, I want art and calculus. They may both be full.
Right.
I know my daughter who was enrolled wanted to take art and she can't get into class. So particularly right now with the second semester starting tomorrow, most of those classes are set. So availability of classes is going to be thin right now. Now, obviously, if you pass this policy and we're talking about a student who becomes dual enrolled, they'll be around for registration for next fall.
Right.
And would have a much better chance at selecting the potential of the class. But it's completely based on availability.
Okay, Mr. Bassnight. First Law High School, as we know, is our largest secondary school. We're talking about availability.
Yes, sir.
Let's say if they choose and there is no class currently available at First Law High School. That means that this particular season, they won't be enrolled at First Light High, nor they would play any sports. It would be the next season, which would start in July.
I would think that we could find two classes, even if it was an online course.
One of them has got to be in the building.
Yeah, but
In the
you-
building,
But
in the building.
doesn't each of the high schools, because I know when my son took an online class where he was in the building, but he was in a classroom with a facilitator. So he was in person, he was just,
Okay.
I would
So
think
that
we
would
would be
still
able
be
to
a
find two
possibility.
classes. Based on the numbers that we're
Projecting.
projecting
Tomorrow.
that we're going, yeah, that we'll have.
Tomorrow we're changing.
By Friday.
Yeah.
Then I anticipate we'll be able to fill that
Okay.
need. We can go deeper as far as
This gives the baseline.
in policy. If we wanted to go all the way back to your school assignment policy,
Sure.
then there's also a workaround, if need be, for where that student attends school. So,
But this gives the baseline.
Yes, sir.
Just so they understand that there is something that is not available at the time. This is the reason why.
And-
Because we
and-
already currently have.
it wouldn't be
classes.
available to anybody that was enrolled.
Well,
whether
If
you're
enrolled
homeschooled
full-time, you
or-
would still
well,
have to
and that's what I'm
navigate that.
saying even about my daughter. I mean,
Right.
she's enrolled and couldn't get the class, so.
That's what I just want to point out.
I think the way to say it is there won't be any preference for courses for students who are homeschooled. It will just be the same, if there's availability when they go to register, it'll be the same scenario as it would be a regularly enrolled student.
Sure.
And I think the policy references not opening another section just because
Yeah.
a homeschool.
Just because of
student
another
wants to take the
student,
class.
yeah.
Right.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Can I weigh in for a second, if I
Please,
may,
ma'am.
on this issue of, I know First Light High School has some numbers, concerns just about their, where they stand right now with enrollment numbers. And, just in complete transparency, there's a couple things. So, I told you we would be bringing you additional policies to tweak if you decided to do this. There's a couple other ones where I think we need to make little tweaks, but these two will allow you to do it if you decide to do it. These were the ones that get started with. One of them was your school assignment policy, and absent this whole issue with any concern about homeschool students enrolling in order to access athletics, I still would recommend an amendment to your school assignment policy, because I want you to build in the flexibility to assign kids considering space, not just domicile, but considering space. And so I'm going to be proposing that to you at your next board meeting anyway, which would give the administration a little bit of flexibility in where to assign kids based on if some place is overcrowded. I mean, and whatever's in the best interest of the kids in the district. So that's something I was going to propose anyway, and that would apply. If you made that amendment in the future, that would also apply. That would help alleviate some of that. And then I think would look at, there are some recommendations that we would make in terms of your evidence of domicile. And this isn't related to the homeschool kids, this is just in general for the district. Just to tighten things up to make sure that the kids who are attending your schools are entitled to attend in that district. And ensuring, that's one of the things you have to do when you get to overcrowded schools, is look at, let's just make sure that everybody here is supposed to be here as far as their domicile. So that would be another thing we'd be looking at. That's really not specific to the homeschool situation, but it is specific to the crowding issue at First Light.
Does that help?
Okay.
Thank you, Rachel.
I got a-
Yes, sir.
The title is part-time admission of homeschool students. Should we clarify that to say 9 through 12 homeschool students? So we know that this policy applies to high school?
I personally would have no problem with that. Rachel, do you?
Nope, that's fine if that's how you want to do it.
Everything that I talked about, I tried to reference high school in,
Yeah.
because that's all we're talking about.
And there's a reference that talks about dual enrolled high school homeschool students that you pointed out, Mr. Woody, in 3105, but if you'd like us to clarify grades 9 through 12, we can certainly put in parentheses next to that.
I think just down the road, somebody moved to the county or whatever and sees that, oh, they can participate in homeschool students, and then read through it. This really doesn't apply to, middle school or elementary school. It's high school only.
And that's definitely a good point, because a home high school could be, 7 through 12.
So do we need to make
The motions.
a motion to amend? How do we do that?
So you can, what you all can do is just, you have a motion on the floor. Did you have a second? You had a second, right, and this was discussion. So there was a proposed amendment. You can vote on it with amendment, or you can withdraw the original motion and make a motion to approve it as amended with the 9 through 12 clarification.
And also add registered homeschool students as just opposed to
Yes, sir.
homeschool. Okay.
Yes, sir. Rach, do you have
And
that?
that's in there in several cases. It says North Carolina registered homeschool.
Just so Mr. Woody brought
I
up.
think we were talking about defining homeschool.
Correct.
Was one of the other points that we wanted to add to the policy.
And we can definitely do that. So you can withdraw the original motion, and then make a motion to adopt this policy as amended with those two amendments, which we understand, a definition of homeschool and a clarification of 9 through 12
In the title.
in the title. Mhm.
I'll withdraw the original motion and make a motion we approve with those two caveats added to the policy.
I'll second.
Do we have a second? Mr. Woody, second. Any further discussion? No further discussion, we'll call for a vote. All in favor of the policy 3105 as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. And Rachel, we have to do 3620, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Do I hear a motion to approve policy 3620 as presented by the superintendent?
So moved.
We have a second by Mr. Weicker and Ricker. The reason I say that, folks, I give them a hard time, is on my cell phone, I have to say it differently, otherwise it won't pick it up. So, every time I call, it keeps telling me it's this, so. It's not the worst thing, yes. So we've had that discussion several times.
You should change the way it's spelled.
We had a motion, it was seconded. Any further discussion on 3620?
I would like to, well, go ahead. No, do it.
Call for a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Before we close, I'd like to make a couple of comments. First, I'd like to say, this has been something that this board's talked about for a long time, even before even prior to the last 6 months. And I want to thank Rachel for taking the time to come out and meet with our administrators to be as transparent and as inclusive as possible, to make sure that, I understand that this is not ideal for all situations and that it can be a little bit of a struggle for the school as well as the homeschool parent, but the path is there. And we're including all Dare County children with the ability to participate, and that's what's most important. I'd like to also thank the chairman and the superintendent for recognizing that this could happen this quickly if we got together and worked towards making this happen. So I'd like to thank the board again and the superintendent and the chairman to have called this meeting and come together to give these kids an opportunity to participate this spring. It's a big win for Dare County.
Glad to do it.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you so much. It's our pleasure to serve you guys.
Thank you, Rachel. Any other comments from board members?
To adjourn.
At this moment, motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
Second. Thank you all very much for coming. Meeting's adjourned.
I've never had one of those motions fail, but I always wonder what would be the.